Okay, so I'll call the meeting to order, and Ann Passes, I'm here. The other commissioners are here. Can you just say your name and that you're here?
Craig Schulte is here.
Thank you.
This is Tracy.
Okay, awesome. We will approve the consent agenda. Is there a motion to do so?
Oh, sorry about that. I was pulling up my packet. Yes, there is a motion right now by me to approve the agenda. And Craig?
I'll make a motion. Yeah.
Oh, you just have to approve. I did.
Okay, I second that. Thank you.
All right.
You get the next one.
All in favor? Ann votes aye.
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 Okay. Then let's go to the climate action plan. The solar PV installation. Is that you, Shane, today?
I believe that's me.
Okay.
Yeah. So.
And if I'm looking here,
before you start,
report. Oh, I'm sorry, Mike.
I think maybe just a little background, because I don't know who was here when this was ever originated. So you might be asking yourselves, what are we talking about? Why are we doing this? And this was a Public Utilities Commission request, and we had intended to do it last year, but obviously stranger things occurred last year, and then so we did not. But here we are talking about it again. I think maybe most of the information that you need to know about it is in Shane's memo. So unless there's any questions about why we're talking about this, then he can probably just go ahead.
I just had a question, Shane, on the photo. I couldn't really get a sense of, is this the garage up by WTIP?
Yeah, the new Public Works garage.
Okay.
And so it is hard to see in that photo, but that kind of drawing of where the solar site is labeled is just inside the fence on the north side of the parking.
So on the highway side?
No, this is inside the fence. So after you come down the driveway to the Public Works garage and go through the gate, then in front of the building, there's a small piece of unused grassy area.
Okay.
And that's where we're talking about.
Great, thanks. That's what I couldn't figure out. Anyway, I'm sorry.
That's the parking lot.
Please proceed in explaining.
Well, what you're looking at are two final proposals from two installers that we selected among a group of 6 for this solar project. So we've got one from a Duluth installer and the other from a Lutzen installer. And I don't know what I mean. I can answer more questions about the project in general, but I don't know what else I have to say about the proposals.
Okay, so are you looking for us to choose one, or is that your role, or how does that work?
We're looking for you to choose one if you want to choose one. So the Utilities Commission wanted us to work on a 20 kilowatt installation. We're bringing you back our 2 best options and just making sure that you still want us to do it before we would move ahead.
Okay. Craig or Tracy, do you have any thoughts on moving ahead with that? I personally think it's a great idea and we should jump on it.
Sure.
My question is, we're doing this to fulfill the 65 allotment, KW allotment that SIMCA will allow us to have on the buyback program. Is that what this is, to finish out that?
Yeah, this is the final. The SIMPA board agreed to let their members install up to 2 megawatts of solar on their own systems that SIMPA would provide a favorable rate on the power for, and our share of that is basically this 20 is our share of that, and that's on top of the 40 that they had let each member do, which we've got sitting on top of the Public Works roof right now. So that's right. This would be the last that SIMPA would be willing to provide a favorable buyback rate for us on without their board taking further action.
Okay. And then this is totally funded by the PUC, correct? Or is there any?
That's right.
There's nothing through SIMCA.
No, we're totally funding it with our own reserves.
Okay.
Well, the final cost between Shem and the Duluth company is really fairly similar. The one quote doesn't break out as much, but maybe that doesn't matter. I'm assuming material-wise, you've already evaluated that.
Yeah, we think they're pretty similar in terms of what's being provided.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, Craig's still thinking. I would just say if this is the path we take, then my first thought would be local, but.
Well, that would be mine too. They're pretty similar.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay.
Shane, is there going to be anything about this that's unusually complicated or weird that would require extra expertise? I just know Conservation Technologies has been in this business for a long time.
As far as the site goes, this is we think a pretty simple installation.
Mm-hmm.
The meter's right there, or the power's right there. It's a ground mounted system. I think when we met with the installers, they were unsure, because the racking would need some footings, unsure how deep the soil is there. But that's something that I think any installer would be able to handle. So nothing was mentioned about complications.
Okay. Craig, what were your thoughts? Sorry.
I guess I don't have any. My thoughts I don't know. I think the PUC was responsible for some change orders that we had to approve through the city council in the first half of this highway project, and I don't know what the second half is going to be. I do have some questions for the next city council meeting concerning the second half of the project. Is this a budgeted amount that was budgeted, or what's going on? That's my question. I know that the PUC requested this to be done, but in light of the highway project, is this something that was budgeted for 2021 going into 2022, not knowing what the highway project is going to end? You know what I'm saying? I mean,
I do. Yeah, I know what you're
something
saying.
We should move ahead with right away, or is this something we should maybe wait till we're done with this highway, second half of this highway project, to see what happens with possible change orders that we haven't seen yet?
I would say this was budgeted for 2020 to do it.
2020.
But that doesn't mean that we have to, right? It just means that you do have funds on hand, and they were set aside for the purpose of supporting the climate action plan. The funds that we would use for this are in the electric fund, and the change orders that you're talking about, Craig, were mostly sewer and water, almost entirely sewer. And when we're thinking about our risk in 2021, it's the same situation. It's almost entirely sewer fund that would be at risk. And I don't know that the electric fund,
Okay.
one, is looking at any additional costs in 2021, and two, is available to help the sewer fund pay for any overages in the highway projects. I think they're probably separate issues.
Okay. I was just lumping it together as a Public Utilities Commission question. Okay.
Well, that's a good clarification.
Yeah. Is there more discussion on this particular, on the solar array project that Shane has presented to us?
I would say one of the things we like about it being local, and really either of these could potentially be considered somewhat local, is that we're going to have now, this will be our third solar installation that the city owns. And of course, we don't have any in-house maintenance expertise. So it's nice to have established folks in the community that can do maintenance on these, as I'm sure we'll need it at some point.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess like Tracy said, since the costs are almost identical, I would certainly, opt for going with the local firm. Anybody else have any other comments or discussion?
I don't.
No, neither do I. I feel the same way you're doing this, so.
Well, I think we're looking for a motion.
Okay.
Okay. Does somebody want to make a motion to accept the bid from Solar Shem Peak Electric?
Yeah, hang on while I make sure I say this correctly before I do that. I make a motion to approve the bid from Solar Shem Supplies. Craig, it's your turn.
Yep. And who's the owner of that company?
Oh, Shem, I don't know. Do
Who's
I
his
know
first
Shem's
name?
last name?
It looks
Shem
like
Falter.
Mm-hmm.
and
It's also
John
Peak
Moore.
Electric with, John Warheide.
John Warheide.
Okay. I'll second that.
Shem, I know.
Somebody second that? Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Let's see. Onward to the EV charger update. Excuse me, I have to put my dog out of the room. Come on. Sorry. So this is the plan to put a couple charging stations in the City Hall parking lot. Is that right, Shane?
Yeah, and specifically today, we're talking about should we be charging people for the use of those chargers? And if so, what kind of price structure should we set up? So in the memo, I kind of talked about different types of charging stations and the history of this project a little bit. And then something that we're still learning about is how exactly we'll be collecting fees. But what we do know is that if we choose to collect fees, there's two different ways for the two different types of chargers. The level 2 charger will be through an app, and the DC fast charger will be a credit card reader. And then I did just receive information since this memo came out that Zeph's app, Zeph is the company that's supplying the chargers. Their app is going to be up and running before we even have our chargers installed. So there's a third option, which is the Zeph app. So yeah, Mike, are there any more details you want to fill in, or from commission members, any questions I can answer?
What do you see elsewhere? What is the common right now? Is there a common?
The common, it is to collect fees, and of the other SIMPA member cities, I believe most, if not all, will be collecting fees for their charging stations.
Okay.
So are they collecting the cost of electricity plus X amount for overhead, or what is the structure?
The structure that most other cities are using is the one I put in the memo. So for the DC fast charger, it was $5 connection fee, 30 cents a minute after that. And then the level 2 would just be $2 an hour. And the difference there is the DC fast charger is one that people are only plugging in for up to 30 minutes or so. Whereas the level 2 is one where you pull in, or you plug in, and then you go and sit down at a restaurant and eat for 2 hours, and it's charging the whole time. It's like a 3 to 5 hour full charge. So people will be at that one much longer.
Okay. So the DCFC one, I'm sorry, how many minutes did you say it takes usually to fully charge?
Well, all of this depends on the size of the battery of the car, but they say typically 30 minutes for a full charge.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
So for the DCFC, then that'd be $5 plus $9. Am I doing the math right? Okay. That sounds like a reasonable structure. I don't know. I mean, I know we don't want to lose money on the deal, but we want people to use it. Do you feel it's too low?
I think it's really hard to do the analysis yet in terms of what it's actually going to cost us to own and operate these versus what we're going to recover in fees. I mean, we'll certainly cover the cost of the electricity that we're supplying, but will it cover the cost of owning and operating? We're going to need a few years of doing that before we're sure. I just know that the scale of it, we're not going to lose a lot of money if we lose money, and we're not going to make any money on it, I don't think. So this is more about learning about how these work and how they interconnect with our system, and starting to build some infrastructure in the community for folks that might want to use it. But I don't imagine that we're going to have a network of a dozen publicly owned fast chargers at some point. I think that this will be something that private entities, and particularly like homeowners and business owners, will be providing as folks that are local start adding more electric vehicles. So that's what this is really more about, is a kind of a pilot program for us. And I couldn't tell you like what do we need to charge to make sure that we cover our costs on. I don't know.
Sure.
Have we seen any trends at all on the private? What Lutzen Resort has one. There's one out in Clearview.
Yeah, you're talking about a program that Arrowhead actually did with their power provider, Great River Energy, where they funded a bunch of them. As a matter of fact, this location, we were in talks with Arrowhead in partnering and putting one in here, and that just didn't happen over a period of time. And now that has gone away, but SIMPA has a program, which is
so that's how those got started. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. And Bearskin has one, right?
Yeah, I think so. Up the trail. The action on this is going to be when people start putting them in their homes.
Sure.
And start owning electric vehicles. And that's something that I don't know that we're quite prepared for. And so we're using this as an opportunity to learn how these act on our system and what we're going to need to do to get prepared for it, but also to learn like how much charging is going on and when do we need, more chargers.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
Right away when you said the lower one that it takes longer, so you go out to eat or whatever, and I thought, oh great, then there's going to be people saying like, where are they? Their car's charged up, like it's my turn, and they're off for the day having fun. Well, get my parking spot. can only imagine. Anyways,
I wonder if I would imagine if the app is smart enough, it could phone the people and tell them it's ready.
yeah, and get your car out of there. It's the next guy's turn.
No, seriously, they must have that.
Well,
Yeah.
and there are ways
I'm
that
sure.
that we can charge people for just occupying the space. And so if you're occupying the space, you're essentially charging, and so you'll just have to pay for that time you're there. And that encourages people to move their cars and turn over more so that we can collect more fees.
Sure.
So see, it's already done. You got it figured out. Great.
Yep.
This would be
kind of amp?
interesting. People come in here and say we should set up a paid parking lot somewhere in town, and I always think, why would anybody pay for parking in Grand Marais? And now we're going to charge for parking, and we'll find out just what kind of market is there.
Well, it's parking plus. So I assume this was informational, or do you need a motion from us?
It's information.
Okay.
But I have a question. Amp-wise, when you're comparing these different types of charging, like the L2 or the DCFC, like if this does move into the residential area or even businesses want to put these in, what does an L2 charging system take for amps? You know, how much electricity do you need? Is a basic house wired for this other than just a trickle charging type system? Because I know a lot of people have trickle charge systems for electric cars, but they don't always have the fast charge system, which probably costs more to get installed, probably a special box with a breaker or a disconnect of some kind, ground fault or something like that. But
Yeah, I think in general, people are not putting DC fast chargers in their homes because they don't need that quick of a turnaround on their charging when they're in their home, and it would be considerably higher amperage. I think that the level 2 chargers are, and maybe someone more informed will have to correct me, but it's 240 or 280 volts, so similar to a stove or something like that.
like a 30 amp.
But the level 1 is just your wall socket, so the level 2 is the next level up. But that I haven't heard of any single family homes with level 3 or DC fast chargers in them, just because it's so much energy you don't need it.
Okay.
They also cost about $25,000. So.
Well, that's the other question I had. I know there was, through the Minnesota Petroleum Association, there was money available for gas station owners to look into installing these, grant money. But I think it all got sucked up by the big chains of gas stations already got the money. But anyway, that's something to look into. I don't know if the city, who's paying to install this? Would this be the PUC bearing the full cost of these, or is there money available through any type of program?
The equipment's being provided.
Okay.
Equipment is Simpus buying it, has bought it already.
Okay.
And we're going to do the installation.
We just have to install it.
Yeah.
Okay. Install it and maintain it. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think moving ahead, collecting a fee, I think is going to be important, at least recovering our cost of the electricity, because you've got to understand we have homeowners who pay for electricity every day. And I think it's fair that we just charge for the electricity that we sell. So whether it's through a credit card system or an app system, I know most systems I know about are credit card. You put a credit card in and plug your car in. But so anyway, I'm just thinking some of this through.
It's interesting that we've been talking about this for a few years, and when we started talking about it, the level 2 chargers, we would have lost money if we tried to charge for them, because it would have cost more to have a system in place to collect the money than the money we would have collected to do it. I don't think that's true anymore with the apps that are set up, but even then, the prevalent thinking was, well, maybe we shouldn't charge for it, and then it swung back to, no, we have to charge for it because we don't want to build an expectation in the public that electric vehicle charging is free. and that they should, expect to drive to tourist destinations and have free charging on the city's dime. And, that's not what we're trying to do here. Obviously, we're trying to provide a service, yes, but we're trying to sell electricity too. This is a utility.
Right.
But it'd be a different story if a business wanted to install one and give it away free and pay us for whatever electricity they use, just as a way to lure people in.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would think that that'll start happening here at some point. I mean, it certainly is happening in a lot of other businesses. You can see that in grocery stores and other businesses.
Okay. Okay. Great. That's exciting. So it'll happen before the summer rush?
What do you think, Jeff?
Hi, Jeff.
Hello. Yeah, I guess we're just waiting to get a hold of Shane or get with Shane, and Matt and I are gonna dig it in, put the pads down. So
Is this going in by City Hall somewhere?
Yeah, they're gonna go in the kind of the back corner of our lot here.
between there.
The first thing we were waiting for was the City Hall project to get planned to make sure we weren't going to put a building there. And now all those designs are done, and that's going to be parking whatever we do. So it feels pretty safe.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't see any reason we couldn't get a locate called in, and we could fit it in. Work on it in between other projects.
Sounds good.
Anything else on that, or should we move on to the load control update?
I've got a question though. This is kind of odd. I know as a gas station owner, we all have to be PCI compliant with credit cards because cards have this chip. And so the credit card companies, because it's an unsigned receipt, are not going to take care of any purchases that are made on fraudulent cards. So it'd be kind of interesting to see how they handle chip cards on electric charging, if they're concerned about PCI compliance or not. That's just kind of something I'm just throwing out there, because a lot of gas station owners have to put in new gas pumps or upgrade their current pumps, and it's a very expensive opposition for them. So I don't know.
We'll go with apps, right?
We will have a credit card reader as well on the fast charger. And I don't think.
I thought Shane just said he's got an app now available. Or did I hear that wrong?
No, you heard that correctly. There is an app available for the DC fast charger, but we also have the option to attach a credit card reader to that machine.
We have a credit card reader in City Hall. We've got credit card readers in liquor store. We take credit cards at a bunch of locations. And so we've already also had to go through that same process and get new readers. I think that what we get for this machine, if we do go that path, will be compliant, but that might be one of the things that Zeph was kind of working through as well. We'll keep you posted on that.
I mean, I look at it that most cities now, it's an app to park. I think that's a common expectation, that an app is all it's going to be, and they can download it in the moment. And if you're an electric car user, you're probably going to have that app. It's probably the same app at other places, right? As opposed to right now, if I go to Duluth, I have to have their city parking app, and then I go to St. Paul, I need theirs, whatever. But this should be one app.
There are two apps here. Charge Hub is a national app, and then Zeph has an app that is connecting all of their chargers in their network, and they're a pretty big network in the state of Minnesota. But I don't know if I don't know a lot of other locations they are. I don't know if they're operating in Duluth or in Silver Bay or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
So two apps.
Okay.
It has its place, but it's just good to see that tradition of the ensemble stuff continue.
Is that your conversation in the background, Tracy, that's coming through?
That would be Pete's. Let me just go shut the door.
Thank you.
Sorry about that.
No worries.
Excuse me.
So if we're done with that, should we move on to the load
Yep.
control?
Yep.
Okay. Who wants to start on that?
Well, lots has been going on here in the month of March since the last conversation we had about this. So we just provided you with a little information on what we've already accomplished and what's left to be done, and also some information on the procedure that we've developed to go through the installation process and the things that we see that yet need to be done that we're going to continue to work on. So Jeff, I don't know if you want to just tell them a little bit about how it's been going for you in the field with these installations.
Yeah, please.
Yeah, it's been going pretty good, actually. It's kind of hard to coordinate with the homeowners, and we got a good electrician, John Heidi, and Matt and I can go ahead of him a little bit and change these boxes out and get 80% of the work done. So he just has to come and test the equipment, make sure that your heaters are turning on and off as they should. So, yeah, we've been getting 12 done each time. I think we're down to 40 left or so. I guess I don't know the number. And Matt downloaded a wiring diagram from New Craig that I guess we should have got that in the packet, but you can probably look at it next month. So Mike knows more about that stuff.
Yeah, that's one of our questions that we still have open that we've been talking about is how prescriptive do we want to be with this? Are we going with one method that everyone has to install all the equipment so that it's predictable and that they know what they need to do? But then we need to really understand what that wiring diagram is and means and have to be able to explain it to folks. And that hasn't been how we've generally done it, or do we more rely on you need an electrician that's qualified and they need to hook this up, and however they decide to do it, as long as it works, is fine. And that's generally how this has been done throughout the program. And we're trying to find that balance where we don't want to leave a customer without any idea of what they're supposed to do. You know, particularly if we come to somebody's house and things aren't working correctly, and we're not planning on paying an electrician to sit there and troubleshoot their house for 10 hours and figure out what's going on. But we also don't want to just tell them, well, it doesn't work. Sorry, it's your problem. Go figure it out either. So that's one of the things we're considering is, well, do we need a wiring diagram that we can hand a customer that they can hand an electrician so that at least there's somewhere to start?
You know, that seems like a good idea as far as avoiding problems down the road, because then you'd know how it was structured if you do have to go in there and work on something. I mean, that makes sense to me. And maybe, I mean, could that also be accompanied with, this is how we'd like you to do it, and if you don't do it this way, we'd like to know how you did do it? I mean, is there is there a way to find out what they did do? Would that matter?
But yeah, potentially. I really like the first half of that statement more than the second.
Sure.
That's the direction we're going to try to go, is this. Let's standardize these, I think, if we can figure out a way to do that without having to have an on-staff electrician. Because we really don't want to have to go back in time and figure out what's going on with that person's system. And, you know, most of these systems have been in place for a long time now. So that's what we're really doing, is going back in time and trying to figure out what's up with all these systems. But as we're doing this, we're also trying to create the process for new customers. Like what we're doing now is what we want a new customer to go through. And so we're preparing ourselves to grow the program as well. That's what we want to do with this. So
Right.
That's why we're wiring diagrams, something we want to look at.
I think that makes a ton of sense. I mean, set it up so that it's the most streamlined and efficient for the PUC to follow up with at any time. Are people balking at that, or is this just sort of a hypothetical?
I don't think that our customers have a lot of knowledge about what their system's wiring looks like,
Right.
and how it functions. So we haven't had those conversations with folks. And honestly, we haven't run into a lot of systems where there's been problems yet either. There's only been a couple where we've had folks have to go back and get work done after our staff was there. And I think, 2 of those 3 were systems that were never hooked up in the first place, that they came online after our old load control receivers were no longer functioning. And so they were waiting for this new system to arrive, and they haven't done the inside the house work yet. So that's a lot like a new customer, I guess, that we're dealing with.
Yeah.
So,
are-
excuse me.
So are our city guys going out ahead then to determine what they need at their house? So then an electrician comes in and assesses, is there some costs involved if somebody wants to get a system functioning correctly or add a system? You know what I mean? And not everybody, the wiring isn't going to be the same in every house. I mean, so are we assessing what the people need and then they hire their own electrician, or do we have somebody we're working with, or how are we doing that? Okay.
Matt and Jeff were going around. We've had a couple of different electricians accompany them, but it's Peak Electric that we've been working with now. That the idea is, particularly with all these old systems that we're installing a new load control receiver on, and kind of in the spirit of what you said last time, where we've got some responsibility here. We're bringing the electrician. We're spending up to an hour if we need to troubleshoot and make sure everything works. And if it takes longer than that, then we're going to let the customer know like what we think the problem is and ask them to address it.
Okay. So that the customer at least knows what they got to do to be part of whatever program they're trying to be part of, off peak or interruptible or, okay. I'm just making sure the customers know what they got to do. So they're aware of the fact that in order to get the reduced rates, they need to have a system that's functioning and working correctly. Okay.
Right. So am I reading the memo correctly that you're down to only 29 customers out of all of them that you haven't been able to talk with or write with or whatever?
Get a hold
Yeah,
of
and since then the guys have been out and done more, so it's probably
Okay,
less than that.
good.
Okay.
So I think, excuse me. I know it was brought up last time, just making sure that we, make all good faith efforts to reach people before we kick them back to the higher rate. So.
Yeah, and our intention right now is we're not going to do that to anybody, that we're going to find all of these folks. And, we've done everything from call them or knock on their door. So, I mean, we're not that big a place where we can't track them down eventually, is our hope. That could be a little bit naive, and there might be some of these folks that are no longer there or something else. And if we run onto a couple like that, we'll let you all know like what's going on before we would look at the next step of kicking somebody off the program. So right now, we're going to just get everybody back and working again.
Great. Tracy, you're muted.
I muted so nobody get any background, and there we go. Do we know if any of these people are seasonal and you really might have problem getting a hold of them?
Yeah, we already have some folks that are seasonal, and we have gotten a hold of them and have decided not to. We have to wait till May 1st when they're going to show up before we do the installation. And there could be some more of those 29 we haven't heard from that we'll be able to hear from in the summertime if they are seasonal. So we'll find them.
Okay. Is there anything else that we need to discuss on this, or do you need us to do anything, or?
No, if you're satisfied with how things are going, then we don't need any action on your part. I think the second page of the memo is talking a little bit about what's up next. And, we need to finish that idea of how much detail goes into our wiring diagram that we provide folks? How specific does it have to be? And Jeff said we've got some examples of that we're looking at. We need an application, a new application for folks to sign up for this program. The old applications that we used obviously had inadequate contact information on them, first of all, for some of the folks, but they also didn't really describe what our system rules were in terms of what the responsibility of the customer versus us is, and in terms of what the customer needs to expect in terms of how we're going to operate it, like how many hours are we controlling at a time. Arrowhead's got some great forms that they use, and in particular, something on the form that we like is that the customer is acknowledging that it's their responsibility to size the system right. So if their storage doesn't last the amount of time we said we're going to control, that's their problem. They need to make sure that it does. And if their dual fuel system doesn't turn on when we control their electric heat, that's again their responsibility to make sure that system is functioning. It's not ours. And we've found, I think, a lot of customers that have a different type of expectation as we've stopped operating our controlling systems. It turns out that some folks were, their heat never turned off and they didn't know why we weren't turning it off anymore. And I'm wondering if that's the only method they have of controlling heat in the house, was whether our heat is on or off. And that doesn't seem like a good system for anybody. I mean, we're certainly not capable of that level of control in somebody's house. And so it'll help to have those application materials just kind of specify that stuff up front. Then we're looking at new load management programs as well. The off-peak and dual fuel are really designed for heat, but they could potentially be used for any electrical load. There's not a lot of other programs out there. Our other Simple folks, for instance, don't do a lot of heat controlling. They do more air conditioning controlling. And we don't have any air conditioning controlling yet, but I suspect that we will be in that business at some point. But there's also industrial loads, folks that are using electric ovens. We've had customers talk about electric kilns. And I'm not sure yet, but I don't think there's any reason we would say no to those if they want to use that stuff when it's not during a peak time. It seems like that would still accomplish the goals of the program for us. So we'll probably look at trying to add in those types of things. And then after some time with this, we'll need to go back and revisit the rates that we're charging. We did a rate study that looked at, what our rate structure ought to be. And I think that kind of helps us go to the next step here, which is to examine the value proposition of the off-peak. What are we actually saving with the number of customers that we have in terms of shaving the system peak down, and in terms of the difference in price between the wholesale electricity that we pay during peak and the off-peak time, and figure out where do we dial this rate in so that the customer is experiencing enough of that savings to make the program interesting to them and worthwhile, and that the system is still experiencing enough savings to offer it. So, but we're just assuming that's the case now. We need to do a little bit more in-depth analysis on those rates and make sure that's the case.
Okay. Anybody else have any other questions or comments about this?
No.
Thank you, Jeff. All right. Looks like we're done. Anything else anybody else has?
Just one quick comment. Really like the newsletter that got sent out, and in particular the comments about suggestions for water in your sink and what goes down the sink and what doesn't and all that. So I don't know who put it together, if that was Hayden or Pat or whoever, but yeah.
Yeah,
Nice.
That's Patrick's baby, but of course everything in there has to come from
Everywhere.
the rest of our staff and other places. So
Sure.
yeah, Patrick gets the credit, but a lot of our staff contributed.
Mm-hmm.
Right. In fact, I clicked on one of the links and signed up for my own house for, was it the green power or something? Anyway, woohoo.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I guess we're done. See you in May.
We'll see you in a month. Thanks, everybody.